Hey guys, what is up and welcome to a new Tesla update video. So today, as per usual, let's go over Tesla. Let's go over the market. Let's talk about what is happening to Tesla as we are running into the delivery numbers coming out tomorrow morning. Everyone's eyeballs are on Tesla now for those numbers. Let's see how the stock reacts. Let's see what the numbers will be. I'll give you my personal thoughts, and yeah, let's jump into it. If you enjoyed, don't forget to hit that like button. This is not financial advice. I am not a financial advisor. And of course, if you enjoy my technical analysis, thoughts on the charts, etc., well, again, I do share my thoughts with my members every single day as the market is open, as the market is trading. So definitely check that out, including today's breakout. So again, love to have you there, guys. If you're interested in joining, again, every single video, the top of the description has a link to join. If you're interested for just $3 a month, that's all it is for the first tier, which includes all my Tesla updates, including broader market updates as well. Intraday, again, as the market's open, trading from 9:30 till 4 pretty much, So again, I'd love to have you there. $3 a month. $5 includes NVDA if you're interested. $7 includes everything else. Private access to our Discord. We have a chat room there. I do chart requests every Sunday with members. And of course, I also have my tier 3 posts on YouTube where I share essentially other stocks in the market that are setting up nicely. So again, I'd love to have you there, guys. Check it out. Link is below. But jumping into a Tesla, respectable day, 3.3% on a day where the market is, looking pretty juicy, right? I've been saying many times over that the market is bullish, right? The market's bullish, and there's no question about that. Eventually, it'll stop being bullish. Eventually, we'll get a 5 to 10% correction. That's just how things go. It's a cycle. But we're not there yet. And we're not seeing anything that's suggesting that. So Tesla riding the momentum. Now, this is where it's going to get very interesting in my opinion, because again, it's worth noting, tomorrow we have delivery numbers in the morning. I actually think they'll be good numbers. I do think Tesla is actually going to print out some pretty good numbers. I actually will be surprised if they're bad. I'll be very disappointed if they're bad. I actually expect them to be good. They should be nice numbers, respectable for sure, at least, if not impressive, honestly. But you have to understand, that's probably why the stock is running into it, right? The market's probably expecting the numbers to be actually pretty good. There's many reasons to believe as to why it's pretty good, such as, for instance, the credits have just finished essentially, I think, last night, right? A lot of people were rushing in to buy before the credit runs out, right? So, it makes sense. There's probably that massive wave of people rushing in to buy before that runs out. So, that should reflect in this report coming up tomorrow morning. So I do expect the numbers to be pretty damn good. I really, really do. But again, that's probably why the market's running up. So let's talk about what happened today and what we can expect moving into the rest of the week. So starting off on the smaller time frames, let's say the 15-minute time frame, for instance, you can see Tesla had this false breakout the other day, right? Sometimes you have to be careful with these, right? Sometimes you get these false breakouts, but then obviously ended up breaking this trend line that I shared with my members yesterday, actually. And then from there, not only to come back up, retest 445 roughly, get a rejection, then you can see as today opened, we broke above it. But the thing that's interesting, and the thing that makes today's breakout a little bit different than, Monday's breakout, which was a failed breakout, obviously. Is the fact that, as we broke out, right, we both of them broke out on some nice volume, which is, good, right? Both volume increase, which is what you want to see ideally, right? Not, doesn't always have to be like that, but that's just like the icing on the cake. It's like much better if you see that. But the other thing that made it better though, in this case, because they both had good volume, is the fact that the 9 EMA, right? Look at the 15-minute 9 EMA right there at price. This one was a little bit distant. So once we broke out, we were kind of distant, right? You can see how far we were away from it. But this time when we broke out, we're right beside it. We're right beside it. And then you can see the next kind of 30 minutes came down, retested 445 and held it cleanly too, compared to this time here where we were kind of like, wishy-washy about it, right? It wasn't very clean of a breakout and hold, right? Compared to today, very clean breakout, very clean retest and hold, and then we just follow through. That's it. And then once that happens, the market, you let the cookie out of the cookie jar, or you let the monster out of the jar, whatever the saying is, it just goes, it unleashes. And that's exactly what happened, right? So we went to my first target, which I said my first target was about 455 roughly, which was this gap fill right here, but we closed above it, which is really, really good. However, I do want to make this clear. The next target, which we got pretty close to, actually, we were only about, $2.50 off, about 465. That's that pivot point right over here. If I zoom out like this, you can see, right, this kind of double range right here between 455, 465, pretty important level in my opinion, right? Because again, we had that gap fill, which we filled and closed above, but we also had this pivot point up here. So these two levels right now, kind of that $10 range is that next major resistance level. Obviously above that, well, we pretty much have a retest of all-time highs in the mid 480s, right? If we break above 465, well, that's probably going to equal another $20 move to the upside, right? But this obviously hinges on delivery numbers tomorrow. How does it go? How does it perform? How does the stock react? Is it priced in? How much of it was priced in? Maybe not enough was priced in, or maybe the delivery numbers were even better than the market's pricing in. We just don't know, right? And that's just the cold, hard truth. No idea. You don't know. I don't know. Even your dog doesn't know, right? And that's just, again, it is what it is. A lot of people pretend like they know. They pretend like they know exactly what's going to happen on earnings or this or that. No, you don't know. Nobody knows. So it's important to see how it reacts. But the fact that we're rallying into these numbers, naturally speaking, makes me a little suspicious, right? I'm not a huge fan of rallying into earnings or events. That doesn't mean it's always going to have a sell-off, obviously, but, it does make me a little more hesitant, right? So the point I'm trying to make is the fact that we are at my next major resistance level here of this sort of $10 range. Now, to me, any pullbacks from here, the first level I'll be watching for is 455, but probably the bigger level for sure is going to be a pullback to about 445 roughly again, right? If we sell off post-delivery numbers, as long as Tesla holds 445, I'm still bullish. Why? Because tomorrow, as the 9 EMA plays catch up and it moves up, an extra smidge to the upside, the 9 EMA, which you can see, this is why I love the 9 EMA. Honestly, of all, the EMAs, 9 EMA might be my favorite because once the stock gets going and you're riding that momentum, the 9 EMA, it's a chef's kiss. It really is. It is absolutely beautiful. And look, you can't even make this up. Both of these sell-offs that we had, these, like last week, I think it was, stopped exactly right at that 9 EMA, almost to perfection, right? You can't make this up. You really can't. So in other words, if we sell off post-delivery numbers, if let's say, the market sells it off or whatever the case may be, the next major support, I will view as 445, right? It is that next major support. We have that 15-minute retest of it, but, we haven't had a daily retest. So if we come down to this level, I do want to see bulls hold around that 445 level. Again, the 9 EMA will most likely meet us there roughly as well, give or take a couple dollars, of course, but that's going to be that main juicy level to hold. And if we can hold this is going to be very, very bullish for multiple reasons. Number one, well, it's just a bullish retest and we potentially continue higher. Like I said, above 465, I think we see at least a retest of all-time highs, right? Around the mid 480s. But on the flip side, actually, no, before I go on the flip side, also why that level is important is because the green fib. So you can see the green fib, the upper range of the green fib is 441, right? Not too far away from that 445 level I've been mentioning. So if we can close the weekly above these green Fibonacci's, that would be bullish. That would be very bullish in my opinion, actually. And it would, I wouldn't say fully eliminate this potential bearish potential still that exists of this being a dead cat essentially, but it would very much eliminate it, substantially lower, at least in my opinion, if we get that weekly close essentially above those green fibs. So, let's see how it goes, right? We've seen Tesla's weekly candle, intra-week, flip around a lot, right? From going really ugly to not that ugly to actually really bullish and then sort of mediocre again, right? It can do a lot of things, right? Especially with delivery numbers tomorrow. So all eyes, in my opinion, on how this weekly closes. But that's kind of the bullish side. Now, the flip side, the more bearish side potentially is if we do sell off, but we do not hold the 9 EMA, and we do not hold 445, and essentially collapse below both levels. If we start collapsing below both levels, that's going to be a concern. That, to me, will start telling me that this was just a major false breakout, and that would be a major red flag. And it has the potential to turn this weekly candle, which so far looks pretty good, despite it being obviously very overextended, into one that probably won't look so good anymore, especially as we head towards that, last couple of days of the week as well. So that's going to be the major red flag, right? Watch how this reacts tomorrow, right? You want to see a strong reaction. And if we see a weak reaction, you don't want to see it too much weaker than about the mid 440s, right? In my opinion. So from here, if we sell off, that'll only be about a 3% sell off, which, people will probably be freaking out, honestly. If Tesla drops 3% tomorrow off delivery numbers, people will be freaking out. And it's just how it is, despite it, obviously being essentially nothing. People will freak out, but that to me will just be a bullish retest as long as it holds. So very important, guys, very, very important. That's going to be probably the main thing to watch for going into tomorrow. And of course, the end of the week with how the weekly candle closes around these levels. Because again, I still can't, it's important to still understand the fact that the weekly, it's still extremely far away from the 9 EMA. Kind of like what happened on the daily, right? The daily, remember how we rocketed up and how we were so far away? And then, we still sort of went up slowly, but nothing too crazy. It was just a very slow, slowly making our way up, bit by bit, like a snail. But ultimately, we were waiting for this 9 EMA. And once that 9 EMA came in, bam, right? We rocketed to the to the next tier, if you will. Kind of the same idea, just on the weekly, right? So let's continue seeing how this plays out. But it is obviously just still, from a risk management type perspective, it is a risky play up here. This is why, when I said earlier that despite it being very distant away from the weekly 9 EMA, it's a weekly, it takes time. It'll not happen tomorrow necessarily, right? It can take weeks, literally, right? Because it's a weekly candle time frame. So while we wait for something like that, it doesn't mean that there's no short-term plays to be made still, such as on the daily, like I mentioned, the 1 hour on that breakout, the 15-minute that I just mentioned as well that we had today, right? You can still make these sort of plays, but the weekly is it's extended. It is absolutely extended, guys. It is what it is. I do think at some point the weekly will come back down and meet the 9 EMA, kind of like what it did here, for instance, right? And then how we react from there will be obviously very crucial. So let's see, guys, let's see. But tomorrow's delivery numbers will be very important to see how the stock reacts. My worst case scenario, if let's say things go really badly, let's say, I don't know, the market is like a massive sell the news event and things go horribly and whatever the case may be, and we get a sharp sell-off, or maybe we get a sharp 2-day sell-off, whatever, right? To me, like the worst case scenario, while still being bullish, actually, like literally the worst case scenario is all the way back down to 350, 360. That's pretty bad, obviously. I don't expect that to happen. That would be pretty bearish, actually. Well, short term, obviously, I still think that would be a bullish retest. But where the 9 EMA is sitting is 400. And that's kind of where I would actually expect it. That's kind of my more realistic worst case. This down here is like my actually like pretty bad case, right? That's pretty worst case scenario, while still maintaining a bullish outlook, because again, I would still view this as a bullish retest. But my more realistic sort of worst case scenario, while still maintaining an overall bullish point of view, is most likely a retest back closer to that 21 exponential moving average, roughly around this trend line and roughly around this gap fill right here, which guess what? Also around, give or take, of course, $400 per share, which is exactly where that weekly 9 EMA is sitting as well. So there's some nice confluence in that as well if we get like a more deeper sell-off. But again, I'm not going to try to pretend I know how the market's going to react to Tesla off of these delivery numbers. Who knows? I don't know. I have no idea, right? So we have these major levels. We have major supports above us. We have major levels above if we break 465. If we get a small-ish sell-off like that 3% sell-off, we want to hold 445. If we start losing the mid 440s roughly, then we can get a sharper sell-off closer to about $400 per share, maybe going into next week or something like that, which in that case I would still view as a bullish retest of this bullish trend line, bullish EMAs, fill this gap potentially, get that bullish retest of the weekly 9 EMA as well. And I just think we head higher from there regardless, to be completely honest with you. But again, one step at a time, ladies and gentlemen. So tomorrow's a big day, right? Let's see how it reacts. My guess is we get a gap up into a sell-off. That's my guess. I think this will really trap people very aggressively. It's a complete guess though. Don't take it with a massive grain of salt. Complete guess, just based off how I would expect the market to really trap people that are really trying to FOMO this in right now. But yeah, all in all, guys, that's kind of how I see it, on the short term, the longer term, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So let me know what you think down below. Options flow over here. Let's take a quick peek. Interesting. You can actually misspell Tesla with the colon by accident, and it still knows you're looking for Tesla. Very mixed, guys. I'm not gonna lie. Overall, the flow is bullish. Overall is bullish, but towards the end of the day, you can see very mixed flow. It feels like nobody has any idea. Yeah, very bullish in the morning, but then the second half of the day, you can see just very mixed, right? A lot of mixes of red and green. Nobody knows. It seems like nobody knows. Some nice calls coming in, 480 call, or 460 call rather, for this Friday, right? Coming in on Tesla here. We also got some puts coming in, 462.5 puts right here coming in, right? We have some big puts coming in as well. Someone's trying to call potentially a major top. Well, we have 4.2 million, 3.5 million, and 1.8 million in puts coming in for, to be fair, it's a whiles away, 2027 December, so it's a bit of a ways away. But nonetheless, 410 strike, 370 strike, 350 strike. Someone is clearly bearish there, right? But someone also bullish here. So very mixed, right? 870, Jesus. A call, 410 call coming in, right, for almost a year out. You can see right here. Very mixed as it's extremely mixed. So I don't see anything one way or the other, to be completely honest with you. Unfortunately, it is what it is. So yeah, let's just see how tomorrow goes. I mean, there's no reason to guess, right? Why guess when you can just wait? Sometimes waiting is probably the most important skill when it comes to trading, essentially. So let's see, guys. Let's see. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow. Peace.